The sun was sinking low over the plains, its fading light glinting off the dusty windows of Daniel Hayes's ranch house. Though he hardly noticed, he had spent the day mending a fence line half a mile out, his shirt damp with sweat and the familiar ache of a day's work in his shoulders. Work was the one thing that never left him, not like people did. It filled the hours, dulled the silence, kept him moving even when there wasn't much worth moving for. He lived the way the land lived, quietly, stubbornly, without complaint. And most days without company. As he stepped into the barn to hang the bridle, the building creaked around him like an old man shifting in his sleep. The quiet had settled in again, hugging the air so tightly he could hear the soft drip of a loose shingle and the slow, tired breath of his horse. He exhaled long and steady, preparing to close out another day exactly the same as the one before it. That was when he heard it, thin at first, barely audible over the wind picking up outside. He paused, head tilted. The sound came again. A cry, no, two cries. His heartbeat stumbled, sudden urgency replacing the sluggish calm of evening. He stepped out into the open, scanning the darkening horizon. The wind was tugging at the grass, storm clouds swelling fast and mean in the distance. It could have been the wind, he told himself. But the next sound was unmistakable, frightened, high-pitched, desperate. Children. Daniel didn't think. Instinct moved him faster than doubt. He threw on his coat, swung onto his horse, and urged the animal toward the noise. The sky cracked with a low roll of thunder. Lightning stitched across the clouds, outlining the fields in stark white flashes. The temperature dropped sharply. The storm would break any minute. The horse's hooves pounded across the open land as Daniel leaned forward, searching, scanning every dip and curve of the terrain. Rain began to spit against his cheeks, carried sideways by the rising wind. The cries grew louder, closer, shivering with panic. Then he saw them. Two small figures near the wire fence huddled close together, trembling like fragile leaves caught in a storm. They looked impossibly tiny against the vastness of the plains, their small bodies soaked by the early rain, their coats clinging to them like damp paper. "Whoa," he whispered as he pulled the horse to a stop, jumping down and rushing toward them. The girls stared up at him with red-rimmed eyes, both pale with cold and fear. One had a blue sweater, the sleeves frayed. The other wore a red coat much too large for her, the hem dragging in the mud. They were identical in every other way. Same soft curls stuck to their cheeks, same freckled noses, same trembling lower lips. "Hey there," Daniel said softly, kneeling so he didn't tower over them. "You hurt? Are either of you hurt?" The girl in the blue sweater shook her head, though she sniffed hard, breath hitching. We lost Mama. We were chasing a rabbit. And then the rain and..." She trailed off, her small voice swallowed by a gust of wind. Her sister's chin wobbled. "We didn't mean to run. We just..." She broke into a sob. Daniel felt something in his chest tighten painfully. Without a word, he swept his heavy coat around both of them, pulling the thick fabric close so the storm couldn't touch them anymore. "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe now. Let's get you out of this cold." He lifted them, one on each hip, tiny arms clinging to his neck, and set them carefully on the horse. Then he pulled himself up behind them, holding them steady as he turned the horse toward home. The sky split open, rain falling in heavy sheets. The girls pressed their faces into his shirt, shivering, and Daniel held them tighter. By the time they reached the ranch house, the storm had become a full downpour. He swept them inside quickly, shutting the door against the wind. The house, normally silent and dim, suddenly felt too small for the surge of urgency he carried inside. He crouched and loosened the soaked coat from their shoulders. "Here, let's get you warm," he murmured. He moved fast, faster than he had in years, tossing kindling into the stove, lighting it, stoking the flames until the room glowed with heat. He grabbed old quilts stored in a cedar chest, quilts his mother had made long ago, their edges worn but soft and warm. The girls huddled in the fabric like two little sparrows, watching him with wide, uncertain eyes. "You got names?" Daniel asked gently, kneeling in front of them. The one in the blue sweater sniffed. "I'm Lily." "And I'm Rose," said the girl in the red coat, her voice a little braver now. "Lily and Rose," Daniel repeated, the names settling into the quiet of the room. Pretty names. He warmed milk on the stove and added honey, something his own mother used to do when he'd been little and frightened of thunderstorms. He set the steaming mugs in front of the twins. Their hands were so tiny they had to hold the cups with both palms. fingers trembling as the warmth seeped into their skin. Rose took a small sip, then blinked. "It's sweet," she whispered. "That's the honey," Daniel said. "Helps warm you faster." The storm raged outside, battering the windows, rattling the shutters, but inside the small ranch house the air softened. Lily and Rose began to relax, leaning against each other beneath the quilts. Their eyes grew heavy, their breathing steadied, and as Daniel watched them, something stirred inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. A protective instinct, yes, but also something more tender, something that reached through the loneliness he had lived with for so long and cracked it open. When the girls could hardly keep their eyes open, he arranged blankets near the stove, making a soft, warm nest. The girls crawled into it without hesitation, curling instantly against him when he lay beside them to keep them from being afraid. Lily pressed into his left arm. Rose tucked under his right. Their soft breaths brushed his shirt. Their small hands curled trustingly against his sides. Thunder boomed outside, but neither girl stirred. Daniel stayed awake long after they fell asleep, staring into the glowing embers, wondering who their mother was, wondering where she was right now, searching for them in the storm, thinking of the fear she must be living through. He tightened his arms gently around the twins. They were strangers, two small souls who had stumbled into his life, like a miracle carved from chaos. But as the storm howled and the fire crackled, Daniel realized something that startled him. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. Morning slipped quietly into afternoon on the ranch, bathing the land in a warm golden calm. Lily and Rose had been giggling ever since breakfast, their small boots pattering across the yard as they tried to stack wood the way Daniel did, except their stacks toppled over every time, collapsing in soft clatters that made them squeal with laughter. Daniel didn't mind the mess. He couldn't remember the last time the ranch had sounded this alive. The girls' voices filled spaces in his home he'd forgotten were empty. He kept glancing at them, at the way they grinned up at him, the way they trusted him, without question, and a strange feeling twisted in his chest. He was getting attached, too attached. But how could he not? They'd slept beside him like small warm stars in the night, and their innocence, so pure, so unguarded, had settled into the quiet places of his heart. As he split another log, a sudden sharp knock echoed across the porch. It was a sound so abrupt that even the wind paused and the twins froze mid-giggle. They looked toward the porch together, eyes wide with recognition, then launched forward with tiny, frantic steps. "Mama!" Lily cried. Rose's voice followed in perfect unison. Daniel dropped the log and hurried after them, his boots crunching in the dirt. When he reached the house, the twins were already wrapped around a woman who looked as though the storm had chased her all the way to dawn. Her hair was tangled, dark curls stuck damply to her cheeks. Her breathing was uneven, chest heaving with fear that had not yet let go. Mud smeared the knees of her jeans. Her hands trembled as they cupped her daughter's faces. My babies, oh thank God. Lily, Rose." Her voice cracked into muffled sobs as she held them tighter, as though they might disappear if she loosened her grip. Daniel stopped at the edge of the porch, giving her space, watching her cry into her. Children's hair did something strange to him, something soft and painful at the same time. Relief for her, sympathy, and something else he wasn't prepared for. Slowly she lifted her head. Her eyes, green like the deep parts of the prairie, like grass after rain, landed on him. Gratitude filled them instantly, overflowing into something raw and unshielded. She stood with her daughters clinging to her legs and brushed a trembling hand across her face. "You found them," she said, voice ragged. You brought them home safe. I can't believe." Her breath stuttered and she pressed a shaking hand to her chest, steadying herself before holding out the other. "I'm Emily Carter, and I don't have words big enough to thank you." Daniel stepped forward and shook her hand gently. Her grip was warm but trembling. "I'm Daniel Hayes," he said quietly, "and you don't owe me anything. Just glad they're all right." But the twins weren't satisfied with that. Rose tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, he saved us. He carried us on the horse, and he made sweet milk." Lily nodded vigorously. "And he let us sleep by the fire and we weren't even scared." Emily's eyes softened further, something deepening there, something that shook Daniel more than the rain had last night. She rested a hand lightly on his forearm, a touch so gentle he barely felt it, yet its warmth traveled up his arm like a spark. Thank you, she whispered again, voice steadier now. I truly mean it. The girls refused to leave immediately. They insisted on showing Emily the ponies they had fed that morning, the coop where they had gathered eggs, and the small corner of the barn where Daniel had found an old tin cup they used to pretend. They were ranch hands. Emily followed them, smiling through exhaustion, listening to every detail. With the reverence of a mother who had nearly lost everything, Daniel watched her as she watched her daughters. She had strength in her posture, even in fatigue, a softness in her voice that matched the twins, a warmth he hadn't realized he'd missed in his life. When they circled back to the woodpile, Emily bent down to help gather fallen pieces. Let me do something, she said firmly when Daniel tried to take a few from her arms. Even if it's small. He hesitated, then gave her a small nod. They worked side by side, their hands brushing once, then twice. The touch was electric, unexpected, and Emily pulled back with a surprised little breath, color rising faintly in her cheeks. Daniel said nothing, but the moment clung to the air between them. After a while, when the twins had wandered a short distance to chase butterflies in the tall grass, Emily wiped her hands on her jeans and leaned a little closer, her voice dropping. I'm raising them alone, she said. Their father passed 2 years ago. A bad winter and not enough help. Her eyes fell to her hands. I've tried to be everything for them, but yesterday, when they ran off, Her voice trembled. Daniel, I was so afraid I'd lost them forever. He shook his head slowly. Don't do that to yourself. You're their mother. And you didn't stop looking. Emily looked up at him then, eyes shining not with fear anymore, but with something gentler, more grateful. Still, she said, voice barely above a whisper, you saved them. I don't know what I'd do if... She swallowed hard, unable to finish. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. He understood loss too well to let her imagine it. The afternoon settled quietly around them as the twins played. Emily's shoulders relaxed. Her laughter, soft but real, rose into the air. Whenever Lily or Rose tugged her hand or showed her a dandelion crown, Daniel found himself drawn to that sound, to the light it brought to her face. Eventually, Emily said they needed to get home, though the girls protested loudly. But Mama, we want to stay longer, Lily cried, arms wrapped around Daniel's leg. Rose nodded tearfully. Can we come back? Please? Emily gave Daniel an apologetic smile, but he only laughed softly, placing a gentle hand on the twins' heads. You come back anytime you want. Gates are always open here. The girls brightened instantly, hugging him tight before running to the road. Emily lingered, her hand resting briefly on the gate before she turned to him. The wind caught her hair, lifting loose curls around her face. She looked at him with a warmth that settled somewhere deep inside him. Thank you, Daniel, she said quietly, for everything. The girls adore you, and I think I do too.
More than you know.
She realized what she'd said a second too late, blush blooming across her cheeks. But Daniel didn't laugh. He didn't look away. He simply held her gaze, something steady and hopeful forming in the silence between them. Come back tomorrow, he said softly. Emily gave a shy smile. Maybe, and we will. He watched her walk down the path with her daughters, their small hands swinging in hers, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt the wind move around him without loneliness. Something had changed. Something had begun.